It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, March 18th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is just still kind of confounded about that game against the Bruins.
Yeah, it's just a head shaker.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You could find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here, as always, with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. You can find us over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, Torts was back behind the bench after his suspension here. Decided to go with Felix Sandstrom in net this time around, given, I think, what happened with Sam Ersson the last time around. Sandstrom was kind of due for a start, but he had, come in relief a couple of times. So,
Right.
but you do have to give him the start. And with this stretch of games, like this one was as good as any, I guess, right?
Yeah, there was not going to be a perfect game. And,
Right.
and for 2 periods, he was good. I mean,
Mhm.
again, I know the Flyers think that they could beat anybody, and that's fine. You have to have that mentality. But
Mhm.
they're not adjusting like they could beat anybody. And the problem is when you play at the effort that they did for those first 2 periods to not let there be an inch on the ice, you knew it wasn't going to last. And you knew it wasn't going to last for the season either. And that's a whole other discussion. But you knew it wasn't going to last in the game. So for a guy like Sandstrom, I give him credit. He held on as long as he could. And then when the dam broke, it just broke.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talked about this game in our preview last week, we talked specifically about having to play them really tight because they were going to get those chances. And I would say the Flyers did that for a good amount of those first two periods. I
Yes.
think there were little breakdowns, but
Yes.
it wasn't that bad. And they really did everything they could, to keep the Bruins from getting additional chances or getting that extra pass off to create another shooting lane.
Did what they could with the personnel they decided to ice. That's a whole other
Well,
discussion
yes.
too.
So that is like the next part of this conversation because Cam Atkinson and Nick Delorier checked back into the lineup for this game. And, I know Delorier got that goal and good for him.
Mhm.
But I just, you look at the ice time that those two got and you're like, it's not a lot. Like what did they contribute overall
Right.
to
Right.
this game, right?
Yeah, I mean, if Laurier didn't have a goal, you'd be like, I'm not sure why he got 8 minutes and what that worth is. And honestly, Atkinson really hasn't shown he could play for well over a month. And he came back and he was getting checked off the puck, really had no presence whatsoever. Like I saw one little spurt where he had maybe a shot. So I have to call him a player in decline right now. And so, like, you're looking at those two and you're trying to tell me there's no other options. Brink wouldn't do better even with like 11 minutes. Lixell wouldn't do better with like 11 minutes. Like, you're trying to tell me there's no, even Cooper Marody could come in and fill the Cam Atkinson role and do it better. And maybe he's not going to provide any offense, but he's actually could play decent defense, which right now Cam is struggling with too. So it's like, and that's just on the forward side. There's problems obviously on the defensive side too.
Right. And I think that, the other issue was the ice time overall because given everything and the way that the third period went, Cam York played over 27 minutes in this game. Like Travis Sanheim, 24:55. Zamula over 22 minutes in this game, which is
And
not typical for him.
no, it's a lot for him. Now, I mean, Zamula played pretty well. York played well.
Yeah.
Sanheim has not played well in a while. And these minutes are starting to catch up to him, and especially the assignment. You're going out there and you got guys like McAvoy and Marchand and those kinds of guys. When you have to face those guys, especially at the end of the season, it's hard. He's never done it in his career. This is the first year. So a lot of guys are getting pushed in different ways, and Torts is just going with the guys he likes. So, okay, I mean, Mark Stahl, what's he giving you? Did Eric Johnson look marginally better? Yeah, yeah, he looked marginally
Yeah.
better. But Mark Stahl did not look good. And again, you only played him like 9 minutes. So now you caused other problems on your defense as a result.
Right. And that's where, the issue we've been talking about is that you can put Johnson out there, you can put Stahl out there, but you should not put both of them out there.
No,
That's the problem,
yeah.
right?
It is, yeah, because the Bruins are big, but they're also fast, and that's the issue there. Now, if people want to say, "Hey, Adam Jennings looks slow," I told you I think it was his processing, not necessarily his speed, but he's faster than Mark Stahl. But even if you don't want Jennings in there, there's Belpedio. You could even try Mete. There's other guys you could try instead of like what you're going to get in Mark Stahl. Like you could try these other guys, and if it doesn't work, then you tried. You still get like 4 more call-ups or something till the rest of the year. You could try in those, but
Right. And try doesn't mean one game, by the way. Try
no,
means multiple games.
right. But it doesn't seem like, they have the appetite to do that, and they're just gonna kinda go with these guys, and it's like, well, you know, right now you have inexperienced goaltending, and if the defense isn't set in front of them like we talked about the show before, they can only do so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, that third period, which obviously was the problem here,
Yeah.
despite the comeback attempt, which was very good, by the way.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm going to watch that Morgan Frost goal on repeat a lot because it
Mhm.
was delightful. But I think that they got into the flailing stage
Oh, yeah.
of defense and
Or not
without,
moving. Guys couldn't move.
yeah,
Like, they were just dead tired. Travis
they were
Konecny was
tired.
dead tired.
Yeah.
Couturier was dead tired. Everybody was dead tired.
Right, and then the combination of being tired and collapsing too much
Right.
didn't allow them anywhere to go to try and head off the play, and when you get into that scrambling mode in front of the net, it's a 50-50 coin toss at that
Yeah.
point, whether or not the puck goes in, and it just happened to go in every single time for the
It just
Bruins in
kept
those
going in. It
situations.
was like goal, goal, goal.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, I mean, this game's over. And yeah, they had a good comeback because they're a gritty team but again, you could see even their secondary scoring starting to fail them. And that's because they haven't tried enough different guys to kind of plug in. You look at all these different teams, they're using John Beecher, even the good teams have put in some of their young players to get them through it. That's what you have to do to get
Yeah,
through
it's
it.
all about fresh legs
It is.
at this point and, potentially different looks that these teams haven't seen yet.
Right.
And I think that it's not even just, new players, it's new combinations of players that will do things that, opponents haven't seen before.
Right. And this tests almost created a new word. It tests the coaching staff, and it does put them into a harder work mode. But again, tough. That's what you get paid for. Like, right now, did the power play have to look so bad? No. Um, there's there's some talent out there that you could put, and there are combinations that you could use that would work. But it just didn't again. And now the penalty kill's starting to suffer because again, it was bound to have just a little bit of a valley for all the peaking that it did this year. So again, you could say, hey, we got all these injuries. A lot of teams have injuries, and you don't know when anybody's coming back. Everybody's skating, but nobody's coming back. So this is the team you have right now. This is it until further notice, until somebody starts coming off an injury.
Right. There's a lot more to discuss, especially, related to the next stretch of games. Like, what do they do next? It's a really interesting question, and we'll see what the Flyers' answers are, but we'll talk about our answers to that coming up next. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boasting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, there's no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for the legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Tomorrow's show will involve the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, and we got to talk a little bit about Flyers versus Leafs part 2, or I guess it's part 3 at this point.
Point three.
Part 3. Plus, we'll answer your mailbag questions later in the week, so get them in to us at lockedonflyers@gmail. You can send us a message on Twitter or a comment on our YouTube channel. Before we dig more into the game against the Bruins and what next, I just really want to note how nice the JVR 1000th game ceremony was. Really nice to see, how much the Bruins put into it, given how short he's been with the team, and involving the Flyers in it, obviously, with that whole ceremony. I love the silver stick. I think that's a great tradition for 1000th
It is.
games.
Yeah, it always has been. Look, the Bruins are a first class organization. They know how to do things like that. And JVR is a well liked guy around the league. I mean, 1,000 is 1,000, man. It's hard to get to 1,000. So uh, I know somebody else was getting close to 1,000 too in the league, and it's nice to just see some players be able to do that because in other sports, a lot of players can't even play 6 years. So it's cool, and it's nice to see he had over 70 people there. So he had to dish out some money, some cash.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we were just talking about is some like roster flexibility to
Yeah,
be able to maybe bring some of the new guys in. And a little bit of that has been taken away from the Flyers because of the Ryan Johansen situation, because he was officially sent down to the Phantoms. He was listed as a scratch for the Phantoms on Friday, but not on Saturday. And then he was listed as a scratch for the Flyers versus the Bruins. There's not a transactional record here to show that he was moved, but he potentially has an injury. What's going on there, and how does this affect the Flyers roster?
yeah. They say he's got a hip injury. He could, not report based on that. And if the Flyers just keep scratching him, then you just lose that roster spot ability. And it does seem like that's the way it's going to go. So, there's not much you can do about it. It's frustrating from a fan perspective because you're watching your team, um, you know, losing some games, and you're like, hey, we could use another player up here, but just can't do it.
Right. So he's like the 23rd man on the roster, which means you can't, carry an extra forward or defenseman in this situation unless they somehow get him on like LTIR
Right.
or whatnot to have the roster spot go away. But that being said, we talked about them putting Atkinson and Delorier back in the lineup and that not really helping matters any. And I think that this is kind of where, you have to question some of these roster decisions, right? Because we have now a lot more games moving forward that are going to be difficult. And still no answers on how we're going to solve them.
Right. Like we mentioned 3 players in the previous segment, they all could skate well. If you want to take Ginny out of it, all the rest skate well. You can improve the team skating easily. Like it would improve instantly. Yeah, you might have to work a little harder to kind of get them installed in there, but a guy like Marody is a veteran. He's played in the NHL. Why hasn't he gotten a shot? Cam Atkinson, at this point, he's a minus when he steps on the ice. I don't know if there's any more magic there. I mean, there was a time where he got a little hot this year, and it's been a long time since then. Travis Konecny can't carry the team on his back. He's not a superstar, and you can see he's struggling to try and
Yeah.
do that, and it's hard, and you can't do that always. So Farabee's helping; he's doing well. There's some guys doing well.
Yeah.
Frost's doing very well, but their secondary scoring's drying up, and they're not even really trying to stimulate that. Brink made a mistake, so all right, well, let's pull Brink out because he helped the Leafs get a goal. Did that matter? Did that mistake cost them the Leafs game? No, they weren't going to win that game anyhow. But how's this guy ever supposed to get better? By the end of this year, if they haven't installed Bobby Brink in the lineup, he may never get installed. So that's a whole, like I said, we may end up doing a whole episode over the summer about that to see if literally his career is on the brink with the Flyers, not anywhere else. So,
Oh,
you know,
Russ.
I know it's right there. Sorry. But the point is, these are things now, these are decisions that are being made now. And you could serve 2 purposes. You could still try and win and keep where you are, and you could put some youth in there, and maybe it would work. Like, again, I can't tell you how many times we've seen teams insert youth, and all of a sudden it helps them get over the hump.
That's the thing right there, is that just because you're putting young players in there doesn't mean you don't want to win, right?
Right.
You still want to win. You just want to play your guys that are the future of your team.
Yeah.
And you think they don't want to win? Of course they want to win. They
Yeah.
want to not only do they want to win because they're athletes and that's natural, but in terms of, them wanting to prove themselves. And they're going to work especially hard to try and give themselves a shot at a full-time position next year, because we all know that the teams look at like the tail end of the previous season to
Hmm.
add to the consistency argument. And I think that it's just super important that we get these guys in the lineup, and like even Gurionov. And it was wild to me that we have our criticisms of him, and I don't know that he's a part of this team's future at all, but he's still like a guy you put him in for 2 games when Torts wasn't on the bench, yank him when Torts comes back. Like, how does that help him at all?
It doesn't. I think that was his, tryout stage. And Torts watched him off ice and is like, he's not going to help us, which he's probably right about that one. But okay. But you're right. Is it fair? No, it's not fair. But
No.
again, this is sort of the way the process is working now. We'll put process in quotes. Like that's how it's going. So yeah, they and again, I still see people saying, "Well, they should have gotten that backup goalie." Getting the backup goalie at the deadline was not
No.
going to be the answer. A better defenseman would have helped you, but you'd have had to give up more assets. And I think Danny knew if he gave up anything more than a fourth, he was going to get some criticism. So he did the fourth, and he's like, "All right, maybe this helps us." And maybe on some level, it's helping them a little. I mean, again, Walker's doing well with Colorado, but again, you didn't want to sign Walker for 3 or 4 years because you don't know what he's going to be like in a couple of years. And this is a 1-year thing where, hey, it's going great. So you had to get assets for him, especially because other parts of that trade are, falling apart, like not being able to do anything with Peterson. That has definitely affected the team at times this year. It affected Sandstrom at times this year. So, you got to
Yeah.
pick. And so, it helped sweeten that deal a little bit too, for the Flyers' future, because they're on this balancing act. They're trying to do the future, they're trying to do the now, and as you see, it's very hard to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I am on team. We didn't need a backup goalie
Yeah,
at the trade deadline.
no,
Absolutely. Because I just, and you look at Urson and you say, well, yeah, he's having some bumps in the road related to the pressure of this unbeknownst situation. But I just have no doubt that this is something he comes back from and he'll be fine. And it's giving Sandstrom a shot. And he's been, again, mostly like pretty good
Yeah.
in net, which I think I'm, thrilled for him
I
on
think
that
he's done
front.
better than I expected him to do,
Yeah,
honestly, and he's made some big saves. I mean, just
absolutely.
this time of year, like we said, with the big teams, they have guys that are used to it and will step up, and the Flyers guys that are used to it and could step up, seems like they may be on the wrong side of their career now. Sean Couturier included. Like, at some point, we're gonna have to do a whole big segment on him and what's really going
Yeah.
on with him.
Right, right. I think that's a huge part of it as well. In the meantime, just keeping one eye. I know like our Tuesday show is our Phantoms Tuesday show, but we talk about getting some of these other guys in. Ollie Lixel had a goal and an assist on Friday and 4 assists on Saturday
Eh,
with a somewhat weakened Phantoms team.
he still produces down there, and he was starting to produce
I
with the
know.
Flyers. That's the
Yeah,
the frustrating part is he did produce in that last game with the Flyers, right? And
he did. He
and it didn't
did.
matter.
Right, and, Tanner Lazinski back in the lineup after being out very hurt, for a while, has come in now. I understand sometimes when guys come back, they have, like, a really intensely good first weekend, and then it,
Yes.
you know, dies down a little bit, but, a goal on Friday plus a hat trick and an assist on Saturday, so welcome back, Tanner Lazinski.
Yeah, I mean, and
But
he's probably been champing at the bit. It's actually not chomping. Champing at the bit. You could look it up on Google. I had to do that once. But he's probably been dying to get back, and good for him.
Yep. Yep. So we'll talk more about that and how it affects the Phantoms and the Flyers on tomorrow's show. But it is Monday, so we will have our Nemesis of the Week segment. We'll get to that coming up next.
Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney, whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed. It's time to go dancing on America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You could even pick who's going to win it all. I have to tell you, the Houston Cougars are high up there. I went to the University of Houston. Bet them. Just visit fanduel.com/lockdown and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league like Locked On NHL. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe. I feel like last week's Nemesis was a little foreboding now that I'm looking back on it, because for me it was getting back from that game in Tampa, which now feels like simultaneously yesterday and a year ago. But um,
Four
it,
score and a year ago.
I know, I know. Um, yeah, so we see what happened after that. That the Flyers, this stretch of really difficult games has been a challenge for them. This week, of course, we have the Leafs again, the Canes, the Bruins again, and the Panthers again. Not an ideal scenario when you're having some trouble, especially defensively, and the PK is wavering a little bit against some of these teams with the top power plays in the league, right?
Yeah. No question. It's definitely wavering.
Yeah. So for me this week, I think, we alluded to this a little bit in the last segment, is that it's really going back to this fundamental argument or fundamental like conflict that this season has presented the entire time. And that's this playoff race versus the rebuild. And I can see decisions being made to service both of these things, but they don't necessarily complement each other. And there's a
Right.
little bit of tension
Oh, yeah.
between them happening now. And to your point earlier in the show, there are teams that are in the playoff hunt that are playing some of their younger players, and that helps them towards the future, not just this season. And, I think that we're used to with a team that is in the Flyers situation in terms of where we were at the beginning of the season, expecting post trade deadline to play a lot of the young guys, right? We did not anticipate being in a playoff race this
Right.
year. And, I just feel like the tension between trying to win and get these points, which is important, and you want to try and win every game, but the goals of the rebuild may necessitate things that aren't happening.
Yeah, that's a frustrating thing. I'll tell you what mine is. Mine is just how easy it is for any kind of hockey to get kicked to the curb television wise. All right, so here's my plight. I have a lot of different services, right? And the one I don't have is ESPN Plus, but I have other ones that kind of have ESPN Plus too, right? And I could surf through 100 games, and they're basketball, 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 men's, otherwise, high school, whatever. Basketball's everywhere. Hockey, I could barely find. You get some on the big networks, the Big Ten network, CBS network, blah, blah, blah. And they have some of those games too. And then Nesson decided to go UMass instead of BU, but I wanted to watch Celebrini, didn't get to. I'm going to see him live in a couple weeks, so that's fine. But the point is, it's just so frustrating. It was like so hard to find this one game, and even in this era when there's so many options and other services. And so that's my frustration, is there's still times when I can't find a game that I want.
Yeah, I think it is frustrating, and there's different sports at different time of the year. Of course, given March Madness and all of that, you're gonna find basketball highlighted pretty much everywhere right now, which is fine. I think that's, the nature of the annual sports cycle. But I think that given all the streaming services and subscriptions and everything right now, I just find everything by searching. I just don't even like look for anything. I just search and find exactly where it is first and then go from there, because there's like no other way to do it.
No,
There's
I
just
do
no
that
other
too,
way.
but there's still some things that I have to surf through to even do a search, and it's frustrating. I spent like 10 minutes, and I was just like, you know what? I give up.
No, I get it, man. It's pretty brutal, and I know, like, looking ahead to the playoffs, whether or not the Flyers are in it, I'm gonna be watching because it's the Stanley Cup playoffs, and it's
Right.
the best thing. But I think that, it changes from the regular season to the playoffs in terms of where to find the games
Yes.
and when and how,
Yeah,
and,
because a
like,
lot
you
of them
gotta.
aren't on the local home cable
Mhm.
network anymore that you're paying for, by the way,
Yep.
that you
Yep.
all pay for if you have a basic cable
Listen.
package.
Mm,
It's a lot. It's a lot, and
yes.
it's not just the NHL, it's the NHL, it's the NCAA. It's starting to be all of them.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. I mean, it's a terrible thing just as a viewer and the day to day of it with all this, but in terms of the cost of it as well. But in terms of how the general media marketplace is operating these days, we are definitely on the precipice of some sort of collapse and restructuring.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And to see how sports might be affected by that is going to be like fascinating just from a
Well,
business perspective,
just
but
think about this.
brutal from a fan perspective.
Right. Just think about this, just as a viewer. How many times have you asked yourself before the day starts, "Oh, what channel is this game on today?" Or "Where is this game on?" You do that almost daily now, right?
Daily. Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I know. I used to keep a spreadsheet and I did not this year. And I have regrets. I think next year I'll go back to the spreadsheet and make sure I know where everything is.
When in
But
doubt, make a spreadsheet.
hey, listen, I live and die by that motto, and it has not steered me wrong pretty much ever. Speaking of spreadsheets, we have one for our draft eligible prospect coverage. There'll be a link to that in our show notes. I think like pretty much every day now. I'd only been putting it on Thursdays, but why
Yeah,
not? We'll put it in there every day now.
sure.
So you can find it if you're interested in any of our coverage of the prospects leading up to next year's draft. And if you have any requests for those for us to cover on our show, you can send those in as well as your mailbag questions You can tweet us at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.